Hello and welcome back to the channel. Sorry for the lack of uploads recently. I don't think I've done a video since Christmas Day if you don't include the car chase compilation series that I did over that time. It's mainly been due to the fact that I've been quite busy over the, since New Year there's been quite a lot going on. I've still waiting on an extension being built at home at the moment. There's a workshop being built on the back of it which I intend to use for the fuel testing videos. And because it's still a building site at the moment, I don't actually have any flat surfaces for the to test levels for ethanol in the testing tubes. I could be doing some of the octane testing, but if I'm going to garages getting a gallon of fuel, and I might as well do an octane test combined with an ethanol one. Also, with regards to the channel, I've had some good news and bad news. That's mainly what this video is about. I'll start with the good news then. Basically, I've got another classic car for the channel, so. As well as having the videos on the Cavalier, sadly this will have to go due to the bad news, which is the fact that the very day that the new car, I'd arranged to have it picked up with the transporter and the new buyer. I woke up that very next morning, there's a letter in the post saying that I'm now actually evicted from the garage that I store my cars at. So now I've got two classic cars, and as well as the ones I've got at home, and nowhere to keep them. So. But I'll worry about that when the time comes because I've still got this place for a month. The new car actually I delivered only 2 nights ago because we unloaded it in the dark. I've basically not seen the car yet, so it's going to be a first look for me, at least in daylight. And as soon as we got in the garage I had to zip off home because I had family over visiting. So that's what we'll be doing now. Let's take a look at it. So here's a clue. If you recognise this key, it's similar to the Cavalier's in shape because it is the same platform. Plus I did mention it at some point, I think over Christmas, that this car was coming. I haven't seen it yet apart from in a short video that was taken a long while ago. That's basically because I bought it off from people I knew, oh crikey, it must be 20 years ago now, from the owners club for this particular car. I actually lost touch with them for a short while. Well, so short while, it was actually about a decade when I lived in Bristol, and then I actually found out that this old friend of mine was diagnosed and treated for a severe cancer, which he actually survived, despite the fact it had spread quite badly. So it was all bad to hear the fact that he'd come down with the illness, but at the same time it was good news to hear that he'd actually fought it off and had recovered. So anyway, because of his house taking the decline, it just meant that he can't have as many projects on the go anymore. He's just got his one sort of show-winning pride and joy of this particular model, which is the same as this car I've got here. So without further ado, let's go and see it. Ta-da! Yep, this car is actually a 1979 Opel Manta. Now, if you do know these cars, you might have spotted a few things that don't quite make sense. It's the fact that it's got a 4-slot nose cone. It's only got the one vent on here because the 70s Mantas, the earlier B series, had 2 there because of the left-hand drive conversion. You basically had a redundant air circulation vent. What's basically happened here is this, although this is a 79 car, it would have been a chrome bumper model originally. Yeah, the car's a T-Reg and registered as I think that's midway through 1979. The front end is actually a 1983 Opel Manta model that you might be familiar with, the 18S and the GTE. They did a GTJ as well earlier on. I've actually owned several of each car. I think this is my 14th Opel Manta now. Hopefully this is one I get to keep a lot longer because like with the eviction of this garage, there always just seems to be something which just fucks everything up. Getting evicted from premises, personal things, relationships going wrong. It can, you plan to keep something for a long time and then you end up sort of being forced to sell. But anyway, enough of my whinging. Let's actually take a close look. It's a non-sunroof model. Of course, a lot of the earlier B series were non-sunroof, and then the later cars, I think there was more sunroof models of Mantas than without. The problem with that is they tend to leak, and the drainage channels start to block up, and then water builds up and starts to rot the roof and the A-pillars. And I think even if they're not blocked, it will channel water down to the sills, so or the jacking points, so you end up getting rot there instead. So basically having a non-sunroof model Manta is quite desirable. Yeah, it's in lovely condition. Like I say, this is my first time seeing this in person and in daylight. So, oh, so we've got some holes in the. Yeah, what's happened here? Because again, the early B hatches, they didn't have spoilers on, but the later 18S and GTE did. So this has had this is rubber as well, obviously not colour matching. I believe there's a spoiler inside, and that to finish it off, but it's nice that somebody's done the holes for me, because that will save me having to get them templated up. But they'll have to stay off anyway, because I think the rubber spoiler, that needs a different, more specialist paint, because it has to be flexible. You can't just send it to any old monkey to spray it with whatever they've got. Yeah, so the late 70s, probably, I think they still had chrome bumpers on the Manta. So there was a black bumper model, but I think that was just for like 1980 and 81, and then they went to these like plastic, much more 80s looking mouldings. But this is the same one they use on the GTE, the 18S, right up until 1987 and 88, where you had the Manta exclusive models, and the only difference is the number plate mounting went from up here to down below the number plate. Number plate light was not at the top anymore, that was underneath, and you had an infill panel where the number plate used to go, because they were only on cars for 2 years. They're quite expensive parts to find now. A lot of people like to go for the Manta exclusive look, especially on the coupes, because they're the sort of more valuable and sought after cars nowadays. So of course, even if you've got a earlier 80s Manta coupe, you can make it look like an exclusive, which in turn looked more like the rally cars. That's what they were sort of going for. They had quad headlamps and bigger spoilers, leather steering wheel. To be honest, there wasn't much difference on them. It was just an upgraded trim level. Speaking of quad lamps as well, I'm not entirely sure what this car comes with, because as you saw from the front, there's no headlamps at all. So let's see what the wiring's like. Oh, no wiring here yet. Now we've got some here. That's all on this side, that's why. Yeah, look, yeah, so they're the two. Oh, that pen made the 540-mile trip without falling out. Yeah, so depending on the wiring loom as well, it might even be easier for me to fit the square headlamps, because originally the car, as a 79 and even as a 1983 onwards replica, as it were, would have still had the square, I called them ice cube headlamps, and they're the ones that I actually prefer. Going back to the exclusive I was telling you about, they actually have quad lamps, and like the rear bumper and other parts you can get on an exclusive, they're made by Ermshire and are a lot more sought after and rare because of the limited time they were in production. I'll get the keys out, let's get this tailgate open and we'll find out what's happening there. I thought I'd use my brain for a change and actually get the car pushed forward, because the brakes aren't connected or anything. I think the handbrake is, but I haven't put it on so it doesn't sort of seize up if I've left it here any amount of time. But yeah, we can have a proper look now. Trying to scratch the shit out of the paintwork. Oh, good hatch struts. Yeah, they're strong. Yes, there's a lot of it's just trim missing, and the parts all seem to be in place. We've got the wiper motor for the rear wiper there. Right, what have we got in here then? So that's door trim furniture. That's what surrounds the handles that you open the door with. Oh bless, look, they've even included the no, that's a good sign, because we've got 4 bulbs, so obviously with the quad lamps we might actually have a set. Of course, if we have, to be honest, the square headlamps, they're my favourite because they're what I remember seeing as a kid in the 80s. All the Mantas that I used to see and want, basically thinking they were cool cars, had the square headlamps. So of course that's what I'm now sort of hanker for, despite the fact that the quad lamps are more desirable. If this has got quad lamps, then of course I can sell those for more money than I could replace the look, a little doggy over there. I could replace those with the square headlamps now, which should be able to source cheaper than what I could sell the quad lamps for. So, I mean, I should be able to get sort of £200–250 for the quads if they're in good condition and working and sort of ready to fit, whereas a set of the square headlamps are probably £100. However, there's more to that than this, because I'm having trouble selling the Cavalier at the moment, which we'll take a closer look at that after we've had a look at this. The Cavalier's already got square headlamps, so I could actually take those from the car before I sell it, and could sell the car as a semi-project or even a parts car, which seems a bit of a shame. But the problem is, because the Cavalier's a rusty, like rat look car, that more suits the sort of Volkswagen crowd go for that. It's not quite. I've sort of got a very limited market for people interested in a Opel GM car covered in rust to be sort of driven with a rat or patina look. So yes, it is limiting the market. You've got to have somebody who's a little bit sort of bohemian, as it were, to be interested in buying something like that to drive it as is. And of course, a four-door Cavalier saloon isn't the most desirable of classic cars if you're going to spend a lot of money to actually restore one. And the fact that the rust is sort of all over the car does mean that there's going to be an awful lot of prep work to get that ready for a respray. Even if you were going to do it yourself, there's still a lot of time, effort and money involved for a car that's not the best of the Cavalier. So people still prefer to have the Cavalier Coupe or even the sports hatch, which is what fundamentally this Manta hatchback platform was based on. Let's go and see if this has definitely got fog lights, because there's a lot of parts in here come with it. This first thing here, this is actually a boot floor for I'm not sure if it's a pattern part or original. Apparently it's quite rare to find one of these down, I can believe it. But this was brought down, brought up really from Penzance, so that my old friend who's coming here tomorrow to pick it up, you might want to skip forward if I'm blabbing on a bit too much here, but the chap who actually picked up this car for me, the transporter, a friend of his heard that he was going down to Cornwall, and they actually asked him if he could pick up a dog for him. So when the car come here at night, as soon as he opened the door, he had his dog and his friend's dog with him, and they started running about the storage centre here. So yeah, that was nice. But if you're still with me anyway, let's carry on looking around here. So that's an exhaust. Oh, I might need to put the camera back on the stand while I start unloading some of this. So the exhaust has got a bit tangled in with everything else, because a lot of this is piled in here, but the first thing I've got out, because they're probably quite fragile, this is again something else which is fit to the Opel Manta GTE. They're not on the 18S or the early GTJ that you could get on the 1983 onwards models. They're GTE side skirts basically, and of course all the platforms are the same. If you had a Cavalier sports hatch, these would fit. I think there's only a slight difference between the coupe and the hatchback anyway. You can get them to sort of interchange, and I think you just need the tiniest modification just to clear the angle of the door or something. That's about it. But you did tell me obviously that it doesn't have any colour matching ones. I had to pay for these as extra actually. They didn't come with the car. Most of these parts here are supposed to be an almost complete car, so it should be enough here for me to finish their projects basically, but they did say they can't guarantee every nut or bolt or component will be there. The chap who had it says he didn't have one section of the exhaust, but I mean exhausts, you can get better ones custom made anyway than some of these off the shelf ones that people have kept for years. But yes, so we've got the two side skirts here. There's another part of these as well, because these basically cover the sills. Some people do call them sill covers, but there's also a arch bit that goes around the wheel arch on the ends here, so I'll have to dig out to see where they are. So the next item I got out is the parcel shelf, which is a massive sectional one. You can probably see it goes across these parts here where the speaker housings are. It's a grey interior. I think some of the, I'm not sure if this is actually whether it's come from a, I think it would have. I'm not sure that the early Manta hatches had a grey interior back here, but of course grey carpet can actually be dyed black, so I might end up doing that depending on what interior I go with. Ideally I want to have the Recaro Daytona check, it's known as. I'll try to get a picture up because that's the interior I want from this. It's the one I prefer the most and the one I remember more fondly. However, they're quite rare now, despite the fact they were in a lot of cars. Obviously they all wore out, but because other people find them quite desirable, they tend to, any time one comes up, it tends to sell for stupid money. I think the last pair of Recaro seats I saw in good condition went for over £500. I've had a few sets since which were in poorer condition, but again, people just jump on them as soon as you advertise them. So the chances of me getting a Recaro interior anytime soon is slim to none, but of course while the project's going on I can sort of actively seek it, and if I do get a bit more involved with the club I might be able to get something which hasn't been advertised yet if somebody's got something in storage. The interior that come with the car, again I don't think it's original to the car, but it's basically a plain black interior that would have been in the Manta 1.8, and it's in fairly good condition. It's something that can just stay with the car for now until I've got the interior I want. If I don't ever find a Recaro interior, I might even have the back seats and this parcel shelf stripped out and have just have some like Recaro bucket seats in the front or something, go along a sort of fast road car, race car look as it were. But yeah, that's the parcel shelf. This does actually separate, so I might have to do that to transport it and keep it in storage, because it's going to be one of the last sort of things I put in the car, because you have to stick to an order if you haven't got much space. And since I'm going to have no space soon, I better start thinking of worst case scenarios. So here's the exhaust. It's not attractive, but it's surprisingly large bore for a 2 litre car of this era. So I'm not sure what the brand is, if it's got anything written on it. It's in good condition apart from some surface rust. Now hopefully we can get this boot floor out that my friend's picking up tomorrow. For anyone that's interested, there is this part number. I'll have to do it sideways, otherwise it'll adjust. There is this part number on this boot floor. You can tell it's for the Manta hatch, because the spare wheel well sits in the floor because it's got an external fuel tank which rocked, whereas the coupes have got a vertical, it sits behind the rear seats, vertical fuel tank, and the spare wheel goes vertically as well on the left hand side of the boot floor. I think these quad lamps might have been left in here as a surprise to me or something, since I didn't ask about it and it wasn't actually mentioned, so perhaps he's left them for last for me to find. So this is the centre section of the rubber spoiler. So it's actually the same colour as the outer 3 pieces here. But yeah, this again requires specialist paint. I was wondering if you could actually vinyl wrap these, because I'm not keen on vinyl wrap unless it's obviously some funky, funky project or something. But I don't like doing a replacement for a standard paint colour, as it were, all over the car. But I think with something like a rubberised spoiler, perhaps a vinyl wrap might be a more sensible option. Yeah, this is a genuine GM part as well. Some of these are fiberglass, but they are aftermarket, and they tend to be very thin and brittle. But at least they're hard and easier to spray. So, you might remember from the previous Cavalier videos, this is exactly the same carburettor. It's the Weber DGV. Of course, I've got a brand new one on the Cavalier, which I could rob off there. There's even a inlet and exhaust. Well, it's just got a manifold gasket. See, you'll notice here that the Opel CIH engine isn't cross flow. You have the inlet and exhaust on the same side, so that's why you have this sort of shared manifold here, and the manifold gasket is just in a nice long line. But my plan was I did really want to splash out and get some Erntscher inlet manifold and 2 Weber 40 DCOEs, but they can be a pain in the ass as well, because you have to get a smaller brake booster, what they call brake servo, because on the right hand drive models the manifolds are on the same side as the brake master cylinder, and that, so of course it ends up fouling that. It's a case of whether you dream a little bit of what you want the car to eventually be, but to get to that point, is it worth getting the car just running and going for now and then gradually upgrading, especially as the parts are here? And it looks like if I do end up having to break the Cavalier, that I'm going to have twice as many parts for this engine, because even though the Cavaliers are 1.9, they are fundamentally the same engine. It is just a CIH platform. There's a manifold gasket manifold. Filter in here, just an oil filter. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, so it looks like the engine's had a bit of paint on it by the look of things. So at least you can get a cheap filter, screw that in place as you paint it, save having to, well, one, get paint up into the where the oil flows in and out. Yeah, it's probably easier and cheaper than masking it. There's the part number if you did want to know the man filter, oil filter for this engine. Right, so given that's the same carburettor that I've got on the Cavalier, the K&N filter. Oh no, this is actually a different one to mine. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, so the K&N air filter on the Cavalier, even though the carburettor is identical, this is actually a different. It's flatter and larger, so I've got a choice of which one I can use. Yeah, it still fits the same carb. It's just that they obviously, K&N did a few variations for the same carbs. I think that's for the vacuum line that goes to the brake servo, so you have that go from the inlet to the brake servo. That's an adapter plate, so or is it? Yeah, I think that's an adapter plate, so you can probably have a pancake filter on that Weber DGV. Yeah, this is handy. This is something I was going to go on about once we got to the interior here. This is actually the 5-speed Manta gear knob. It was the later cars had a 5-speed Getrag gearbox, so from 1983 onwards they were all 5-speed. The Manta 1.8, because it was an overhead cam, the Getrag gearbox on those are actually, they were really sought after, and they're now quite rare, because basically you could fit any General Motors overhead valve and double overhead cam, overhead cam and double overhead cam engines. You could convert for, so the red top, for example, that was in the Astra and the early Calibras. You could have that in a rear wheel drive inline configuration. So a lot of Manta GTEs and 1.8s actually have red top engines fitted. They just use the sump gearbox, engine mountings and a couple of other things from the original Manta 1.8 engine, which is a little underpowered actually at 90 horsepower. Of course, the old-fashioned fully cast iron CIH engine that the Manta GTE has, albeit with fuel injection, only has about 110 horsepower on 95 octane fuel, and if you run it on leaded it's about 115. And but of course a lot of the cars, when the leaded fuel was phased out, a lot of cars actually had their timing retarded about 5 degrees, so it could actually run on a lower octane fuel. So a lot of the Manta GTEs, they seem quite underpowered now because of the fact that they were detuned to run on a lower octane fuel, which is again another reason why I actually promote super unleaded fuels, because with some classic cars you can keep the original timing, and that way you've got the original power output of the car. But onto this one, obviously a 1979 Manta and the Cavalier, for example, they have the ZF 4-speed gearbox, which if you've seen some previous videos, you've probably seen me driving the Cavalier. Once you're doing sort of motorway speeds, and that in fourth, it's a 1-to-1 final drive, so of course the engine speed it's pretty high for cruising speeds. So the 5-speed is beneficial, and of course a lot of people do the conversion. But so that's a little bit strange, which I'm not sure if they do it because I can't see it being any easier. They want to keep I guess it's alright if you want to keep the fully original look of the car, Cavalier or the early Opel Mantas, earlier than this one, so 1975 to 1982. If you want to keep it original, then you can convert it to a 5-speed Getrag gearbox, but then they want to keep the 4-speed sort of bent lever gear change. Now I find they're quite ugly. I prefer the 5-speed one because it's a lot closer to hand. It's a more modern change for an old car. It feels more late 70s, early 80s, whereas the bent sort of ladle gear change I don't really like. That is sort of too old-fashioned, not very ergonomic. So I don't understand why you would upgrade to a 5-speed gearbox and still want to keep the 4-speed gear selector, because it's miles away from you and looks funny, apart from obviously, like I say, for the sake of originality. On this car they've done the same. I'm actually being sent a gear linkage, so to finish off the 4-speed lever to 5-speed gearbox conversion, as it were, on this. But what I might end up doing is I'll try and source the 5-speed part of the chassis or floor pan, the tunnel top, from a 5-speed, as well as the plastic centre console trim, because the 5-speed gearbox is closer to the driver and just in front of the handbrake. It's a different setup, and of course with the tunnel top, I could just cut out what's already there, and then you weld in the new piece to have the thing back. But then of course I'll have to find a gear linkage on its own, which I'm not sure how easy that would be to find from a fucked gearbox or something. So again, it's whether I get the 4-speed linkage so I can actually drive the car running with the 5-speed box, and then look to do the 5-speed, completely 5-speed stuff later on. Same with the interior, same with the carburettor setup. These are part of the door furniture. These are obviously the armrests and the handles you use to pull the door. I've no idea. So there's a rear wiper for the hatch tailgate, or rear hatch, whatever you call it. Oh look, brand new wiper arm. Oh, it's a genuine General Motors one as well. There's a part number if you need it. So I've uncovered something, so yeah, we'll get to that in a sec. These are the kick plates. So this one goes on the passenger side. That's the holder for the service book. Most of these go missing, or of course because you get a bit, the car's parked outside, you get a bit of damp, it just rots them out, unfortunately. I think reproduction ones made, so I might be able to get something made up in there. Yep, that's cool. That's the driver's side one. On the GTE, because it's a multi-point fuel injection, the ECU sits behind this thing, but on all of the other cars, including this one, because they're carbureted, it's yeah, it just covers the panel there. This is similar, but this is for the boot in here somewhere. I've got them the right way around, but yeah, they just sit in the corners of the boot. This is the one that goes on the top of the hatch here, and this is the one you need to remove if you need to replace the rear bulbs at all, so that fits in here. Can't remember if these were black, if you did have a black interior, or whether they were all grey, but yeah, I probably won't bother colouring those anyway. So we do have quad lamps, fantastic. We need a full assembly. Oops. Careful of these. Yep, so these are the genuine, again it's probably won't focus, so let's get the light on. So these are the genuine quad lamps. They're worth quite a bit. It's already in the car's colour, which is nice actually, but I don't know, I still prefer the, even though I know these are the desirable sought after ones, the exclusives have them, makes them look more like a historic rally car, I do just prefer the square ice cube style ones. So these are some sort of, this is still running, isn't it? Yeah. This is some sort of backing plate, I suppose. I'm not sure if these are adapters to allow different types of lamps to fit the original quads, but I'm not sure. It might be up to a new buyer to figure that out. Auto pal, well, not Hella. They're not Hella or Cibier like the originals are. Yeah, certainly a lot more modern. I think that's obviously a date stamp. Oops. Yeah, they're all matching. As this one's been fitted, that's obviously where the... Oh, I see. Yeah, so it is an adapter plate. You use that to obviously drill out the holes to mount the replacement lamp units. Very smart. Oh, I've got a spare one as well. There's 4 here and the one's already on it. Yeah, and these are the seals that go around the outside, just to keep the water out. This is one of 2 door cards. It's in like a grey but with black carpets. This is counted as the black interiors door panels basically. So this is a driver's side one. I've spent so much time behind the wheel of Mantas and that I remember even the black Recaro interior that I had these door panels. So that's absolutely excellent. These will be obviously staying with the car. These will be the ones I'm using. Again, in my head I'm thinking of getting like dynamat, doing all the dynamating all of the doors to stop the knocks and rattles, but then of course if I have the sensible head on, I'll probably just fit these and go with it for obviously budgetary and reasons of practicality. What we got here? I think these go on the seat winders. The seat winders in there already have them, so that's handy spare. But yeah, I think they're for the seat winders. I might find they go somewhere else. And that's seat adjuster handle. So underneath, obviously, you lift that up to move the seat backwards and forwards. There must just be some trim clips. So this is a Walker exhaust section. This is the resonator, and that's the, I think they're called collector. It comes straight off of the cast iron manifold. This part, yeah, certainly is worth having because you can still attach this to the car and run it sort of semi-silenced, as it were. And then you can even have the stainless steel part built off of the back of this one. So I think the only part of the exhaust missing is the back box, which just comes on the mid pipe actually goes over the rear axle, and it's sort of finished off by the back box. That's the only part missing on this. So again, if you had most of that exhaust fitted, it will still not obnoxiously loud in that if you were to run the car. So the round pieces in the little bag here, I've just figured out they're screw covers that go in the centre console, which I'll eventually look to replace to have the 5-speed one. That's the 4-speed. Yeah, that's the 4-speed gear selector. It's had the end chopped off, so whether they were going to keep the 4-speed sort of bent further away thing and stick the 5-speed gear knob on it, I don't know. A few random bits, I'm not sure what they're for. So these parts are the rear arch cover of the sill covers that I mentioned earlier, or the side skirts as they're called together. Yeah, it's a GM part, this one, if anyone did need the part number. But because these are still attached to broken sections of skirt here, so yeah, it's always handy to have a few extra screws and fixings. So we've got a couple of the, I think that the way these fit is that you actually do just drill holes into the outer sill and put these little plastic things in there, and then you just put a screw through these. Whether there's any better modern methods like using you know, a bonding agent or something like that. I do remember a lot of Mantas that I had that had these parts retrofitted years ago. Looks alright from the outside, but when you get underneath the car, somebody's actually just used like self-tapping DIY screws and that to attach them, which is a little bit lazy. We certainly won't be doing that. So we've seen everything in the back now. I've got the rear bench seat up, it's locked in place, so it's nice that he's fitted it for me. And yeah, we can obviously keep that for now. I might even get this lower and put the parcel shelf in, so can you put some light stuff on the parcel shelf. Might be better for storage now that the this floor rear floor section's out of the way. Let's take a look at the interior. Oh, before we go there, I just wanted to mention as well that this is Astro Silver, or I think it's Astro Silver. I certainly want it in Astro Silver. This is known as the two-tone Manta to the guys that were building this originally. I did hope that this was a vinyl pinstripe and lower two-tone section in anthracite. Fortunately it isn't. This is actually painted on, so although it's a very nice job, I would really prefer to have a single colour Manta. So yeah, the front and rear bumpers are in anthracite. The wheels are actually really nice. These are, so the GTE wheels were all the same, and the Manta exclusives, that's the last 2 years that I was on about with the body kit, they had anthracite wheels, which is this colour. So I do have the option of selling these as exclusive alloys in really good condition. It's got Falcon tyres on as well. These are, yeah, I mean, these are basically brand new. I think they said obviously it was stored with these on for about a year, but they shouldn't flat spot in that time, and of course it has been rolled about a little bit since. If you do have to store cars, obviously make sure the pressures are really, really high on them, and ideally you want to actually jack the car up and get it on axle stands if you're going to store it for a long time, and that if you want to look after the tyres. But sometimes the best thing to do is actually just put a really crap a crap set of tyres, or even just to get another set of wheels and store the wheels separately. But tyres have a lifespan anyway. Once they're over 10 years old, and that you shouldn't really be using them. But anyway, back to the wheels. I could sell these as Erpshire ones, and then sorry, not Erpshire ones, as exclusive Manta alloy wheels with the centre caps as well, and with the money from that, or I could do maybe a straight swap to get a set of the silver alloys, which were fitted to the most of the body colours of Manta GTEs from 1983 to about 1987. Of course, if you have an Astro silver car, then the silver alloys do sort of colour match unintentionally. So a couple of the Mantas, actually, the gold and white Mantas, and I think there was also a coppery, bronzy, platinumy colour, they actually had colour matching wheels, which today a lot of people sort of say looks a bit sort of garish and that, but again, I quite think they looked all right for their time, and of course as they're classic cars now, where they're not supposed to look in keeping with modern taste. So when I was still waiting for an answer on this car, I was actually bidding on a car on eBay, a Manta on eBay, which was gold. It was a gold automatic that had been converted to LPG. Still a major project because it had quite a bit of welding to do. Worst of it was around the chassis swan necks, which are the place Mantas and all cars on this platform typically go. So it would have been a bit of a welder-thon, having to get rid of the LPG rubbish. But that was a gold car with gold alloy wheels, because I would have kept it like that. And a lot of people were saying that, oh dear, these gold wheels look terrible on that. And but yeah, I disagreed. But of course, the car still went for fairly good money. So I do have a little bit more paint to do on this. I won't be doing it myself, so I can only really do it with rattle cans and it will look terrible. My initial plan was to get the side skirts, the spoiler and the front and rear bumpers done at a company I work for, and that I might be able to do some sort of extra days for them in exchange for getting them to paint the bumpers for me. But because there's now going to be a lot more work, basically the whole bottom half of the car is painted a different colour. Well, I don't think it'd be any cheaper just to have the bottom half done. I think if it was just a full car respray in silver, not forgetting that the original colour is silver, so it's not like any extra work has to go into painting any of the interior metals. So again, what sort of order I do that in, whether I get the car running with what I have here at the moment, because the car has to be moved out of this garage in the month. If there is somebody who can take the paintwork on, then they can have the car obviously delivered to them as a rolling chassis, paint it that way. It can be done in that order, but of course that way I'm then having to rebuild a car with freshly painted bodywork, and I've still no idea where I'm going to be storing it afterwards. So we see the carpets are black grey. This is a black rear bench seat, and as I mentioned earlier, these are a matching black. Oh, dear, getting nervous. Of course, can't put the windows down at the moment because the winder's not in, but it's nice to see that this is all working. So that saves me a lot of fiddly, sort of horrible work, and that you seem to want to get jobs like this done in like half an hour, and that ends up taking you best part of the day when you're doing it on the whole car. That's the fuse box. Fuse box, it actually isn't fitted, although a lot of the wiring is in here. So again, this is, oh no, it is there. Let's get the light on because we've got a bit of glare going on. Yeah, so I've got the rest of the dashboard. I was thinking I was going to have to take parts of the Cavalier's dash off, but this is nice because I'm not sure if the 70s Mantas had this texture of dashboard, because this is the, oh actually yeah it is, because the top half here, you'll notice this texture is the 70s the style, the 70s look. It's the same as the one I've got in the Cavalier, it's just this is much better condition. This lower half, however, is actually from the 1983 onwards Mantas. This is a sort of a grey It's a smoother finish. This is like a matte finish, even though it probably doesn't look too much different in the camera here. But this is a big chrome, a painted on sort of shiny chrome effect strip in the Cavalier, and I believe the earlier Mantas. So this is sort of a hybrid dashboard. But it's in such good condition, it'd be a shame. Oh, it's got a little hole drilled in it up here and a bit of a scuff, but it's in good condition. And of course, I don't have a replacement. Again, if the Cavalier had the later Manta one, I'd probably be tempted to swap them over. But as it is, I'll probably keep this as is. Yeah. Now you notice here that modern stereos they don't fit Mantas, even though the Mantas were in the late 80s being sold with modern single DIN radios. They actually had to have an adapter plate to make it stick out, and it did look a bit strange. And that's basically because of the heater system. It doesn't give much depth for the stereo to go in. Of course, you can get classic look MP3 players, but I think they look a bit out of place on Mantas because they're not sort of not cars from the 50s or 60s, and that they try to make them look like old radiograms, and that rather than just a nondescript old car stereo. Yes, we've got grey. We've got a lot of grey dashboard parts from the later Manta, and of course this is black with the dashboard because this is the 70s look. Yeah, so that's the the linkage is missing because I'm going to be sent that at a later date for your selector. But this metal underneath here, obviously this would be filled in, and then this part here is where the 5-speed gear stick goes. But of course you could probably weld a piece of flat metal, cut it out of here and make a smoother bit of trim for it. But I think most people ideally look to get a tunnel top instead, cut this out and weld in the tunnel top, and then of course you have to get this plastic piece. Even in the black interior cars, it's the same grey as this. Handbrakes in exactly the same place. These screws come out the same way as well. Seat belts these are the 70s 70s seat belts, and that are quite funky and chunky. They're on like the thing, whereas the 80s cars, this it doesn't have the springy thing here. It's actually a flat solid piece of metal, and they fold backwards and forwards, so you can keep them out of the way. If I can get a seatbelt set from a later car just to make it look like the post 83 cars, great, but it's not something urgent for now. Most people looking at the car won't even know the difference, but I will, and that's sort of what matters most. What colour's the mirror? So we've got a grey mirror. Something I did even on my show-winning car is I swapped a 70s Manta mirror because they're black, exactly the same mould as this, but it was a black mirror. So when you take photos of the car from the front, if it's a black interior on a dark coloured car, you see a big grey panel in here. So swapping this for a black one just makes that look a little bit better, especially when it comes to, even though it's a concourse competition it was entered into, it just looked better from the outside. People won't notice something like the mirror not being original because it's the same shape, it's just a different colour. It was also handy because I saw the show-winning Manta that I had to sell quite a few years back. That's ended up in Ireland, I think it is, and it was actually appeared on an advert for a garage floor company, and that where they sell you like sectional garage floor coverings. And this guy who had it had like a 6-car sort of storage lift or whatever you call them, and one of the cars is an anthracite coloured Manta GTE. It looks mostly original, but I noticed that you can't see this mirror. It's a black one, so I'm pretty sure it's mine. It's obviously undergone considerable restoration since even when I had it, because when I had it, it was basically completely original condition. So it's still not flawless, even though it was a concourse winning car. But the person that obviously bought it afterwards, who's ended up with it, has done a full, because of the mileage basically, it had done 16,000 miles from new when I bought it. This is a 1984 B registered car, and I think it's only done 17 or 18,000 miles now. It's got to be one of the, if not the lowest, it's certainly one of the lowest mileage Mantas in existence now. Plus I can talk a lot about the mirror, can't I? Yep, so we've got nice nice headlining. God, I haven't got to replace that. A little bit of a stain back there, but yeah, you certainly can't complain on the car of this year. And a lot of these are sunroof ones, so this bit's all cut out and you've got a leaky and temperamental sunroof in there. They're all mechanical, there's no electric sunroofs in Mantas, but what happened was if they were become slightly out of adjustment, you would open it, and then as you pulled it, the paintwork on top would be scored by the cassette that it sits into. So again, it's another reason, if you're into you know, Manta preservation as it were, and into these cars, you want to ideally look for the non-sunroof models. If you go for a Manta exclusive, however, they're all sunroof models, so if you want to keep them original, you have to have a sunroof. But if you want it to, if you've got one that's sort of rotting out and there's not much you can do with it, you can cut out the section and either have a sunroof delete where one's welded in, that won't be original anymore, or of course you can fit a slightly larger sunroof, and that with a better seal from a different car. The last few bits we've got down here, so that's the goes underneath for the. So this is the 5-speed gear gator. So this would be the one that goes here. So I don't know if they were trying to make it so that the 4-speed was going to have the 5-speed stick and the gator on it, and it would just be bent back like this or something. That's a fuse box cover, and that's the bigger fuse box cover, the part that goes over here. It does have this part. These are a pain to fit, the steering cowl. Oh, and since you might remember from the Cavalier, look, we've got, yep, the steering column on this one is solid, and they've got collapsible steering columns. If you don't know, in the video I did on the Cavalier over here, where I changed the steering wheel, there was a slight up and down movement, and because what happens is they have these there's a nylon like bar in it, so if you're involved in an accident, it's so that the steering column doesn't spear through your chest. Basically, you have a collapsible half of it, and then the solid part, and that will sink into that, but of course it relies on a nylon thread to brake, so of course any sort of violent movement to the steering wheel, and that can shear the nylon bar, and then of course you get this up and down movement, and that, which can be remedied, but it's a bit of a pain, and they do fail MOTs if the tester notices, because it's not something that's sort of done really on modern MOTs. And of course once the cars are over 40 years old, which the Cavalier and this car is, they don't actually need MOTs anymore because it's been exempt from cars over 40. So mileage is like, it means a lot because the engine's rebuilt. I haven't actually seen the number yet, so to check it if it's the original engine, but I know it's had a full rebuild basically by the guy that's had this car stored for a long time, so that who's been doing the actual storing car, who lives in Cornwall. He's done a full engine rebuild on this. Oh, it's got a, oh, I love this. Oh, I've never seen this before. Not that I've never seen a choke before, but this choke knob actually feels like the same as the OE Manta parts, because any Manta that I've had that's had the Weber conversions, obviously you put a choke cable in. The Cavalier, I've put a nice aluminium one in. A Manta 1.8 that I had on a Weber DTML carburettor had the one that come with the Weber. It's a square, sort of very plain looking one, so yeah, this is nice. The steering wheel, actually, this is the thing that has been a bit of a bane on the Cavalier. I haven't been able to find even a you know, similarly sized horn push. So again, I've got a hornless I've got a hornless steering wheel in the Cavalier of this style. Of course, this style does suit the 70s cars. This is a 70s car. The Cavalier is a 70s car, but because we're going for the 1983 onwards GTE look, then I would prefer to have the Irmscher leather steering wheel. I know that contradicts the sort of principle I had on the quad lights to the cube lights, but the Irmscher leather steering wheels are much nicer. Once you've taken the cover off, if you drive without the cover, you've got Irmscher written here. It's got nice sort of drill holes, and it's a they're in like a gunmetal grey colour. They just look a lot nicer. But the standard Manta wheels now, they're not quite as you know, classic car looking, or quite as desirable then as the Irmscher ones, but I would still replace this with that. So I can sell this wheel with the Boss is sort of riveted to it. I'd have to sell this with the Boss together, Obviously, I must have a complete steering wheel to replace it with. I don't want to make the mistake I did last time, where I got this steering wheel without the horn centre, and I've not been able to find a horn centre for it since. You would have thought something as simple as that would be easy to find, but yeah, doesn't seem to be anything around I can use apart from like sellotaping you know, some cobbled up switch in there. Yeah, it feels really nice, and oh, that doesn't press it. Oh Christ! Yeah, it's probably wants a bit of dielectric grease in there or something, but yeah, it feels nice and solid. A lot of these start to wear over time because it's a one stalk does all basically. That's your wiper, your washer, your indicator, your main, your flasher, your main beam. That's the rear screen demister. This is the headlamps. Oh, and this is another thing that was a bit of a pain on the Cavalier because the Cavalier had one of these missing and one of them broken. And I was trying to find replacements for these. One bloke sent me one for free, but because he just threw it in an envelope, it ended up getting churned up in one of the Royal Mail conveyor belts. So I just ended up getting an empty, well, half of an empty envelope with a note of apology from the Royal Mail. Of course, I never ended up with it. I did finally find one of these in original packaging. It was new old stock technically, because I couldn't find another one. I've had these both open on the Cavalier, and of course on Mantas, because from I think it was, when was it, about 1981ish or 1982, you had to have a rear fog light on all cars. So the Mantas had, and a lot of cars, in fairness, at the time, you just had this ugly sort of fog light just hanging off the back of the rear bumper, and of course they had to have an internal switch, and that's what one of these were used for in the 1983 onwards Mantas. I can't remember actually. I don't think these were chrome as well on the 80s ones, but yeah, I'll have to double check that. Oh, that's actually not chrome. That's just shining in the light, but this is chrome. But yeah, because and then the top one, as a very rare option on Mantas, was for the front fog lights. I had one Manta that had front fog lights of the 14 that I've now owned, and I took the switch out of here, and they're worth like 50 quid now. I think I got 25 quid for it when even, you know, over a decade ago when I sold it. So yeah, they're fog light switch areas and that, and even though I'm going for the 1980 look on this, I don't want some like ugly fog light hanging off the back, and thus I'm not going to have the switch. So nothing in the glove box. Yes, all I got with this car is a logbook, which is, you know, I like having provenance with a car, but I suppose this has had so much done to it, it's so different from what it used to be. The Cavalier and that, because that's despite how it looks, it's fundamentally original. So of course I've got service history from the 70s right up to all of the. I've kept every sort of receipt that I've spent on the car to date. So it's got this really thick folder of service history. It's got every tax disc, every MOT. And it's just a damn shame that it looks like, you know, I'm not going to have any takers for the car, and it's going to end up getting parted out. I mean, it's not even that high mileage, because this is showing at least 90,000 miles, where the Cavalier's done 75,900. Excuse me, just getting over a cold. So yeah, I think we're done in the interior. The last thing then is let's have a look at the engine. Oh, that's the bonnet release isn't connected. Not sure what the glass colour is here. It is original because it has the embossed number plates, you know, the security thing they did. Of course, Mantas, they had a bronze tinted glass on the 1980s models up to the exclusives, which I think were green or blue or something. Yeah, green. It's got a blue sunstrip though moulded in. Yes, we've got the wiper arm in with the spares there, but these both seem all right. That's a bit of a shame there. I can't be too fussy because it's certainly a lot better than this. Yeah, it looks like, yeah, judging by the panel gaps here, I don't think what is the bonnet actually fitted at all. So there's the jets come out of there. Yeah, there's been a bit of a scrape where the bonnet's gone onto it. Yep, I don't think they need the stand again. So here we are. So we've got standard radiator cowling. The fan's a viscous fan. Not sure whether that was on the 70s cars or not. So again, it could be something I could rob off of the Cavalier if I end up breaking it. Is that is this the points distributor or the coil? Ah, yeah, it's probably electronic then in the Manta, because the condenser would be showing on the outside. I don't run too hard. I don't need a screwdriver. Oh, lovely solid battery tray, because they can rot on these because the weather gets in through here and can leak out a little bit if you leave the cars parked outside. Yeah, a lot of this just looks in far better condition than what I've been used to recently. Starter motor's in place, so we've got no alternator. So, yeah, because with the quad lights you do actually need an uprated alternator as well, because if you're driving at night with the full beams on and you've got like I don't know, you listen to the radio or you've got the wipers on, then you do need to actually have a little bit more oomph in your alternator. Yeah, it's just looking more and more like I could save myself some trouble with selling the Cavalier and obtaining some parts I need for this by having it as a breaker. The problem is, because I've got to be out of here in a month's time, I can't really expect, you know, somebody in my family to let me keep the Cavalier on their driveway while I'm actually stripping it for parts. So yeah, there's always fucking something, isn't there? Ah, yes, that's the battery clamp. That's fallen off, but luckily it's got stuck in on top of the chassis leg there. Yeah, well, I'm glad the oh, so we do have brakes in. Oh yeah, there's fluid in it as well. Yes, we've got yeah, it looks like we have brakes. I thought they were, I didn't think we had front brakes. At least I knew the mechanical handbrake was on the back. I didn't know this was all in. This is nice. Yeah, so obviously the whole inlet and exhaust manifold's gone. This is weird. This is I think this is a GTE. I think it's a GTE thermostat housing, because the one on the Cavalier, because I've got no hoses either. I've got no hoses for the coolant. The hoses in the Cavalier will fit this if it's got its original 2 litre S, not 2 litre GTE part. So again, that's something else I can rob from the Cavalier. Cavalier's got an alloy racing style radiator with extra cores. This is just a 2-core radiator. Obviously in modern traffic and that, on old cars you really do want as much cooling as possible. So I can have the fixed fan, the radiator, thermostat housing, alternator. I mean, there's a huge list of parts building up which I could have off of the Cavalier to have it as a parts car. I did have somebody text me with an offer on the Cavalier, but because he says he's in Newcastle and the cost of getting the car to him was substantial, but I mean it was still cheaper than it cost me to get this car here from Penzance. So he couldn't afford to pay more than £2,000 for it. But I mean, it's not that I don't appreciate the offer, but I mean, £2,000's a bloody insult really for. Not saying he insulted me, but as a price, it's just you know, you insult yourself then, let's say, by taking a taking that much off of it. Because I mean, I think I paid to get the car to me anyway. It was about, I think the Cavalier was 2.7, and I've spent at least that again on parts. And that's not including motor. I know you never get the money you've spent getting a car up to speed back. It's just that I'm not even getting the price I paid for the car originally back, and the fact that we've had huge inflation since then. I mean, when did I get the car? That was 2020, and that's when things were just starting to get bad because of the massive quantitative easing, they call it, but it's basically just money printing, which is, well, don't get me started on Keynesian economics. It's just, yeah, it's never a good idea. Oh, this is nice. The rocker cover has got the opal embossed in it. This is still the earlier type, so you've got the hoses just get shoved in there, but the breather system. So I could. Oh, has it been bolted? No, it hasn't. So well, that's another thing. Then at least it won't waste a gasket. I didn't do a video. I have actually filmed the video. I just never managed to do the script and get it uploaded of how the oil level raisers fit on the CIH engines, because I have an oil level raiser in the well, somebody's made one for some pipe in the Cavalier. I actually bought one as well off of eBay while they were still available. It's basically a modification because the CIH engine will eat through camshafts, because when you start them up, all of the oil washed its way back out of the cylinder head, and it takes a while for it to be pumped up again. So you basically have an oil level raiser to keep a bath of oil in the cylinder head, and that way it prevents it from the inherent camshaft eating issue. I can't bloody see because it's still got one bolt in by the look of it. I haven't got many tools down here. Yeah, I think that does have a. I'll put a light on. Yeah, that thing there. I think that's the oil level raiser that keeps the oil at a higher level, just to keep the camshaft healthy. So it's the original block length. It's a 2 litre S. Not sure what the cylinder head is, because if it's got P2E on the cylinder head, I forgot where you read it, that means it's an unleaded cylinder head, but they weren't put onto the, into the very last few Mantas. The one off the Cavalier would be no good anyway, because that's still a leaded head. It's starting to go a bit rusty as well. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the original cylinder head. It's still probably a leaded car. That's something else I discovered as well. You can buy tetraethyl lead, because although you can't supply, it's illegal to supply leaded fuel now, it's not illegal to make your own. So you can actually buy lead, add it to good quality high ethanol unleaded petrol, and then make your own leaded petrol. So I could actually make up a couple of batches and just run that through the cars, just to coat the exhaust valves with the exhaust valve seats technically with lead, and get that to stay on there to keep them in good shape. Oh, actually, this is something excellent as well. These stainless steel I mean, these aren't original. This is polished stainless steel. It's that's the wiper motor. So this is a wiper motor cover. That's your pedal box cover, I think you'd call it, or bulkhead cover in a polished steel. This was actually made by a guy I used to know in the Manta Club, again, donkeys years ago. I spent a fortune on this stuff because it was absolutely fantastic products, and that for Mantas he used to do stainless steel. Like, so you'd replace your washer bottle and all the plastic parts with stainless steel ones that he'd handmade. His company was called Custom Solutions. Yeah, and these were, I don't know if he, for 100% whether he made these, but I mean, he was the only person supplying these products that I knew of. So yeah, it's nice to have that and that, because he's, I don't think he's pursued that company for a long time now, so it's, yeah, they're certainly quite rare. So I sold my show-winning Manta with all of the Custom Solutions stainless steel parts, because that all went with the car, and then I God knows what happened to them, because I actually sold the car to a dealer, which was unfortunate. As I mentioned earlier in this video, it's circumstances, and I basically met somebody. She's the mother of my daughter now. Hey, Mummy's new car. Do you like it? It's a Datsun. So I certainly can't regret anything that's happened, but of course I ended up having to sell the show-winning Manta that I had quickly, because I was moving from Oxfordshire to Bristol, and I had no way of keeping the Manta. So of course the dealer had me over a barrel, and I had to sell that for a pittance. But it come with all of those Custom Solutions parts. The car was original, and it had, but of course it was dressed. It was designed to be a show car, and that. So I'd have the bonnet up, and it was supposed to wow people with shiny chrome and polished stainless steel stuff in there. And of course he's taken them out and probably even thrown them away, because they wanted to sell the car in completely original condition. And then the person that bought that off of him has obviously spent a fortune having it completely stripped down and fully restored. Yeah, so still got the work cut out for us then. I mean, there's a lot here, there's a lot's been done, I can tell, and obviously the condition of the car, we can't really get underneath it while it's here, but yeah, there's, to have a shell that's basically as near as makes no difference, rust free. You can just see the tiniest little dots, and that there's just no rust in here at all. And again, we're going from that to this. It's that makes a lovely change. You can see down here, this is where the indicators for the same as the Cavalier as well, the indicators mount to here when you have the chrome bumpers on, but because when you put the 1980s air dam style bumper, the indicators mount to that. So you have the two mounting points now for it. Yeah, something's missing as well. This is a trim piece goes here. It's a very hard to get hold of part. Again, it's not that it was rare or expensive or anything like that. It's the fact that when you can't send them through the post because it's such a flimsy bit of material. Actually, I'll show you on the Cavalier what it looks like. Yeah, so it's one of these. I could keep this one and then spray it or get it vinyl wrapped in black. Little screws. Fantastic. Just trying to see what else might be missing. The steering rack's all in place. Got the suspension. Something I was curious about. Yeah, is that GTE suspension? Because I know, obviously, Manta 1.8s and Manta 2-litre S, the Cavaliers, everything else, they had sort of clown car-looking suspension. It was really high, but of course, because I mean it is a bit high, but. Yeah, it hasn't got a lot in the back yet, a lot of weight on it, but it's not as high as I remember. The Cavalier's been lowered a lot as well. I mean, they were very high suspension. That's a good, I don't know, 75mm drop, I'd say. And I do want GTE springs, because I mean it's still practical to drive over speed ramps and hitting modern potholes, especially with these were called ultra low profile tyres when these cars come out. But it's that's a thick bit of rubber. In this day and age, so of course you go over potholes and speed ramps with these. It's a lot more comfortable, and you're not wrecking your suspension. It's just much more practical, and even driving around in a weekend classic. I didn't really want to have the clown car height suspension. I did want to have the GTE springs, because the Manta GTEs had lower than the standard springs that looked a bit silly, to a more sensible height. And gas shock absorbers, or dampers, whatever you like to call them, on the rear, just to give it slightly sportier handling. It's a live rear axle with an open diff, so it didn't handle that well, but certainly a lot better than the Capris, which are a leaf spring. But I just noticed this isn't an original windscreen, but I suppose you don't expect them to be. And there's a tiniest of stone chips there, but it's nothing to worry about at all there. Yeah, so all of the glass has got its embossed number plate security things in there. That's including the rear hatch there, so it is only the windscreen that's non-original glass. That's always nice to see. So I better start getting some of this stuff back in the car now. I better get a sheet on my friend's panel there, just so we can pick that up tomorrow. Yeah, it's good news on the quad light, so it has got quad lights. I'm most likely going to be selling the quads, using the either some ice cube ones that I can find, or I'll nick the ones off the Cavalier. Because I've still got a month as well, I can sort of make the decision now then that I can break parts off of the Cavalier to get this one up quicker and more cost effectively. And since I'm not having much serious interest in the Cavalier, I may even be able to break even on it by selling the parts that I don't need for this, because there's going to be a lot there, and of course I've still got the time to do it while I'm here. So let's take a look at the Cav now, and we'll just go over a few things on that, and otherwise it's going to be a very, very long video. Here's the Cavalier looking, to be honest, that's looking a bit sorry for itself. It's been in the garage since the London to Brighton run. It hasn't even been washed since then. That's why I've got plenty of brake dust on the wheels there. I have sort of run it up at least once a month anyway. I sort of run it up to temperature, drive it around this site here just to keep it running okay. And in fact, it isn't running okay. Every time it's cold, it sort of starts running on. It runs on free for a while. I have to start it on choke if it hasn't been run for a long time. Day-to-day use, even on a cold morning, you don't have to use the choke. It will just start, and that as long as you just give it a little bit of throttle for a few seconds. But when you start it on choke here, it'll start but then run really rough, and then you have to put the choke in and hold the throttle open manually for quite a long time before there's a little bit of heat in it. Then it will run an idle but firing on free, and then once you get a bit more heat, it'll just run normally then. So I think it needs a damn good run, or something that's got a bit gummed up over time while it's been sat stored. I did, once it was up to temp as well, I gave it some good hard revs as well, and some black smoke was coming out as well, so there's probably a bit of oil's made its way into the into places where it shouldn't be. Yeah, so I did offer it. I've put a for sale sign in it here just in case there was any passers-by that might be interested. It also gives the channel a bit of advertising as well. The wheels, I've actually sourced some. I say source, a bloke I work with, he's got a Toyota MR2 which he sold, but he kept the wheels off them because he had aftermarket ones on there. That's a 4x100 PCD. I'm not sure if the centre balls are right, but I mean a 4x100 wheel should fit these, and he's going to let me have them cheap so I can keep these ATS wheels, because it's got these tyres are near new. I mean, they haven't even done 1,000 miles yet, and it took me ages to get them because of the weird size. So again, they'll still be sold. It's just that I don't have to sort of give the whole car away. At least wheels are easier to store than a whole car. And if the car can go as a rolling chassis with those MR2 wheels on, then that's even better, because they're only going to cost me 15 quid a wheel, when I can get like a, I want to try and sell these wheels and tyres for around sort of 300 plus if I can. Well, congratulations if you've made it this far listening to my relentless waffling. And I'd also like to say thank you to my existing subscribers and all the people who have subscribed since Christmas, because I aimed for a target of 350 and I think I'm at what's over 380 now, so thank you to all of you as well. Of course, most of the people subscribing since then could have been subscribing due to that compilation, car chase compilation I did. Most of this channel was about sort of car repairs and a lot of stuff I'm into, like testing petrol for ethanol and octane, which I will be returning to, because if the workshop isn't finished anytime soon, I could sort of use this octane tester on the road, as it were, at the various petrol stations. It's just that I can't do the ethanol testing without a flat surface and a bit of concentration and such. I do have a lot of footage to upload still. It's just something I have to do in my spare time, and not doing scripts and editing it. I'm not that computer literate, but I normally sort of throw the videos together, as you can probably tell. And I'll obviously keep you updated on the Manta. If there is anybody in the sort of Oxfordshire, Wiltshire, Gloucester area who has access to, let's say, some farmland or a barn that you could possibly rent me, that'd be fantastic. Anything you might know about, obviously please let me know in the comments below. Like I mentioned, because this is my first time seeing this Manta along with you guys, it now seems more of a blessing in disguise that I couldn't sell the Cavalier, because it looks like I will need to take a lot of spares from it to get this Manta done. I think it's going to be more cost effective to use the parts that I've already spent a lot of money on the Cavalier and keep those, because it'd be like I've spent that same amount of money on this car had I never got the Cavalier. And then of course a lot of the parts on the Cav are also fairly valuable, can be used on Mantas, Asconas and such, which I won't be using on this, but of course I can part those to probably get more money than I could if I sold the car complete with all of the stuff that I've mentioned that I'll be using on here. At least that's the excuse I'm going to use myself. It seems a terrible shame because I mean this is a low mileage classic car that's you know, I was using it as my everyday car, but needs must, and because of the news of my eviction on this place, obviously it's leaving me with very little choice. Not all of us have a massive amount of space to keep cars, as you can appreciate. The next couple of videos I'll try and catch up with the Fiesta, because I do have footage of me doing some fairly basic stuff like changing the brake pads for EBC green stuff. So if it's something you've subscribed to the channel for, looking at the work I'm doing on the Fiesta for anything you might want to do, then obviously stay tuned for that, and thanks so much for watching.